Welcome to LOA Today. I'm Walt Thiessen.
With me today is life coach and LOA teacher Joel Elston.
This is your daily dose of happy. We are so happy you decided to join us today. Hey, Joel, I got a question for you.
Sure.
Have you ever been sick and tired of being sick and tired?
A few times. Yeah.
I think a lot of people live their life that way, actually.
Sure. I agree. Actually, that's a sort of a cliche within the addiction community. You know, are you sick and tired of being sick and tired of your behavior and your actions? So change it. That's often said in addiction.
And how does that work out when they try?
Usually miserably. It's hard to change. You know, as you know, the process is sort of like our topic. The process of being sick and tired usually elicits a central nervous system response of fight or flight. And so when you're living, you know, when you're constantly going through trauma or whatever's happening, your body is constantly in fight or flight mode. And not getting into all the details, but when the fight or flight mode requires the body to change chemically. Mm-hmm. So it releases a lot of cortisol and a lot of adrenaline for literally preparing to fight or flee. It floods the body, and then you're doing that. So that sounds, well, that's wonderful, but it was never intended to be engaged at all times. It's always been intended to be engaged for short periods of time to either escape or fight. Mm-hmm. One of the damaging things that happens when you're in fight or flight is your immune system basically quits working briefly until the threat is passed. Your digestive process is not efficient. There's other factors involved. Your focus is not always quality because it's just it's a big preparing to. You're not rational. You're thinking in right now. So once you get in that, then you're always in what I call survival mode. You're just surviving. Every day you get up and you survive. And I'm an expert on that because I did that for a long, long time. And while you never are able to really get past that day, I just got to get through this, And it's not a great way to live. It's a horrible way to live. But it can manifest when you look at it. It can look like you're lazy, you're overwhelmed. I work with a lot of people in various situations, but often with addiction. It can be other situations too, where they're just overwhelmed by the process. I have a young man, he's an alcoholic. He had a DUI, and he did a month in jail, and he lost his job, and he lost his transportation, and he couldn't get around. He lived in a rural area, and to get your license back, you have to enter a program. You have to pay for the program. You then have to get your fines paid with DMV. So it's an incredibly intensive thing to get handled. So many factors. You got to get insurance. You got to get all these things. So he was relying on people to take him to these appointments, do these things, and he didn't have the money to do it. So his parents were helping him. So every day he just said, "Joel, I just can't do one more thing. It's just." I get one thing done and seven things pop up. So it appeared to his parents that he's just being lazy and unmotivated. And I just said he's overwhelmed. And I'm not making excuses, but I've been in a place where I literally couldn't do the most basic stuff when things were so bad. And it's built on that whole concept.
Sure, yeah, because when everything seems to be going wrong, the natural thing for the human body to do when everything is going wrong is to shut down.
Right.
And part of the reason is what you were discussing. You discussed the fight or flight syndrome. When you're in an actual fight or flight situation, you need to shut everything down so you can marshal all your resources to run or to fight. You need all of it.
Yeah. You're not going to be able to be in fight or flight mechanism and then be able to compose a well-written business letter or log in a bunch of medical bills. You're not going to be able to focus on that because you're in fight or flight. And then on the other side of it, when you have been in fight or flight for so long, those chemicals that are there, they're nasty chemicals when they're there for too long. Cortisol, it actually does a lot of bad stuff to your body, and it also can lead to a lot of depression. And depression itself is the body saying, "We don't want you to do anything. We just want you to lay in bed." It's a vicious cycle. So it's really hard to get out of that. I'm not saying lazy people don't exist, but the assumption because somebody has been through a lot of stuff that they just can't. It seems ridiculous. This is a great story. Years ago, I had a client that I was working in South Carolina at the time in our treatment center there. And part of what I've always believed, it isn't just addressing addiction, it's also addressing the things in your life that while you're in treatment, let's get a plan. So I wouldn't be able to say, here's what we're going to do other than just stop drinking or stop gambling. Let's get a plan in place. So after my interview with him, I was fascinated that he had one class, a 3-credit class away from graduating. That was it. I'm like, really? And I said, well, the low hanging fruit there is let's just go do that class. I mean, you're going to graduate with your degree. The field he in needed a degree. So, I mean, that was so obvious to me. And he goes, well, I just, I failed the class. I didn't show up and they're not going to let me take that class over. And I go, I think they probably will. So anyway, I said, tomorrow, we looked up the number. I said, call the place and call the school and ask what's necessary to enroll for this one class. So he did. And I got a text from him. He said, yeah, I was right. They told me I can't. And I said, look, I cannot believe that. Conference me in on that call. So he called back. The same lady answered. And I introduced myself. I said, he's on the phone with me. And she laughed and she said, yeah, he hung up on me. And I said, what? And he said, he explained the situation. I told him that we couldn't enroll him. That's when he hung up. But he didn't let me finish the sentence. I just need the professor that was there to agree to make the grade disappear like it never happened. Then he can re-enroll. We can do that right now. And he said, the interesting thing is the professor's here right now, and he's also in recovery from addiction. So she put us through. I taught for him, explained it to him. He taught the guy. He said, oh my goodness, I'm so happy to hear from you. I always wonder what happened to you. You're very bright. Of course we'll do it. He said, please enroll in my class. I'll support your recovery, and I promise you you'll graduate.
Wow.
But he hit that wall of all he heard was no. And there we go. It was off to the races. His brain would not allow that to go forward. And that sounds ridiculous, but I see that a lot. Just that little bit of, we did that and it's just not there.
Yeah, well, it doesn't sound ridiculous to me because I know exactly what that feeling is.
Right.
By the way, we have some interesting comments that I wanted to share with you in the live stream here from Anna. She had 3 comments, and I'll read them to you. She says, what if we are neutral, a more powerful stance? And then she says, depression comes when you're not seeing what you want happening, and you are not smart enough to let it be. What do you think?
I think that's all pretty relative. Yeah, I think it's good. I mean, the idea that depression, I get what she's saying. Depression is obviously a very complicated concept. Carl Jung was a big believer that, and this might be similar to what she's talking about. Carl Jung didn't really believe in depression per se. He believed that people who are capable of living way up here, but are living way down here, he called that space depression. That when you weren't living up to what you're at, he really believed it was more of a situation. It was a lifestyle. It was what you're doing. And I think that's something that sort of, maybe that's exactly what Anna was speaking about, but something along those lines. Depression is there is clinical depression. There is that. There are people that for inexplicable reasons have brain chemistry that just lends to depression. The vast majority of people that are depressed, it's always situational. I mean, it's a drastic amount of people that are situational. However, again, we talked about this, was it last week? Medicine tends to, no, let's give them a pill. That's better. But it's not where we're at. But depression is individual to the person. Only you can determine if you're really depressed, what it feels like. We all at some points experience a level of depression sometime in our life. A lot of times we don't identify it because some people just think they're sad. And sometimes it's just sadness. Sadness is a valuable emotion. It's there for a reason. Sadness does not equate to depression either.
Yeah. And that's an important distinction too, because you're right. There are a number of different negative emotions we can experience, and the tendency is to lump them all together into one, but they're all quite different.
Yeah.
Mainly because
Yeah.
of the way we think about them and the way we feel about them.
Right. So the other day, I'm going to give an example of something that happened to me yesterday. So
Okay.
I have this situation going on where I'm working with a client. He's in the middle of trying to rent this house. His mom lives in Pennsylvania. I'm working hard on getting this thing done while, trying to help everybody out. And so in the middle of the day yesterday, the lease he had in place, we were scheduled to move in this morning, right? We were scheduled to move in this morning and had movers in place, electric in place, everything in place. So the landlord texted me and said, you can't move in tomorrow because we have these things. And it's not even rational. So on Sunday, on Easter, I have to, while on a call with the client, I reach out to the lady who, my dear friend and my assistant who helps me a lot, or she's really a colleague. She's not my assistant. And on her Easter, she handled all this for me, right? And did a really good job of it. And so she postponed the move. She did everything they needed to do. And so I said, I'm so sorry that you got stuck. No, she goes, this is so exciting. And I'm like, oh my God, because it is. I mean, this is my life, so I don't really view it as exciting. It's just my life. But to her, it's like, wow, this never stops. There's always something cool. Well, I later thanked her that evening because I go, she's right. I get to choose, is this stressful or is it exciting? And it literally changed my whole perspective. So your perspective, we're going to say this at some point in the show anyway, dictates your reality. And so every emotion has a reason. Every feeling has a reason. And when you can understand what that feeling is, like I'm feeling overwhelmed. And ironically, that's why I'm late tonight. That continued into today. And we were rescheduled to move, and the landlord, probably in an illegal manner, totally voided the lease over some little minor thing and said, you can't move in. And we're scrambling to he was scheduled to move out of the place that he was at. It was disastrous. But once again, my colleague stepped in and handled all of it. I mean, he's able to stay where he's at for another few days or a month or so. None of that matters, but it was just this idea that, wow, this is incredibly stressful, or it's just, hey, it is what it is. My perspective dictates that. When you're looking at everything as we're existing, when you're exhausted, your perspective is sometimes fixed. You don't have access to your perspective. You do, but it doesn't feel like you do.
Yeah, there's almost like a divorce that took place, and I understand exactly what you mean, because it does feel that way.
Yes.
And the thing that I really liked, I mean, for listeners who are wondering where this whole topic came from, it came from a post that Joel shared on Facebook, as he so often does, that essentially said it's not that you're blocked, it's not that you're depressed, it's not all these other things, it's that you're exhausted. And I thought, wow, yeah, how about recognizing the real thing? Because it's not like most of us who fall into a depressed state or even a more neutral state, or something that's uncomfortable. It's not like we chose to. It's not like we said, I feel depressed today. It's more like that's where we ended up after we're fighting and feeling like we're losing and fighting and losing and fighting and losing. Of course, it's exhausting, but whoever acknowledges that, I mean, that's what I loved about the post. It actually got acknowledged that this stuff it'll wear you out trying to get around.
Of course, and we have a society that's pretty fast paced. There's not a lot of people. Exhaustion is sort of simple. I mean, it's like, yeah, you're exhausted. You're frazzled. Your whole system is not functioning. We aren't here to be anxious and nervous and frazzled. And be exhausted. The body requires rest, and when you're in that state that you're constantly in, it's very hard to get deep sleep when you're feeling like that. So you're even more exhausted. Everything feels overwhelming. Everything's crashing in. And, like in my profession, sometimes it is very critical. I mean, it's life and death at times. And I don't have time to, I don't have latitude to screw up. Like this guy with the house and everything. I mean, it's serious, but it isn't that serious. You know what I mean? But it's stressful, but it's not that level of stress. There's other times like
Like
if I don't,
it's misery,
yeah,
but it's life and
yeah,
death.
yeah. But I have to get this guy that's having he's having a overdose of heroin go on or fentanyl right now. I got to get this Narcan in him like within 15 seconds, or he's dead. That's a different level. That's a different level. Right. So being able to operate that and understand where you're constantly going, and also your perspective of who you're on the journey with can change things too. And the reason I'm saying that is having somebody else or having support. Most people that are in that exhausted state, they often don't have a very good support system in place, because the right people will say, you need to do this for yourself. You need to make sure you take care of yourself. The right people are worried about you and concerned about you, help that out. When you don't have that, it's easy to fall in that. You don't have anybody sort of observing and helping. Say you need to at least please consider taking self-care, relax, deal with these things. And that's why it's having a great support network is indicative of healthy mindsets.
And it's also indicative of whether or not you succeed or fail with what it is that you're trying to accomplish, no matter what.
Yes, absolutely. Absolutely.
Makes no difference. It could be a job. It could be health. It could be a relationship. It could be money. It could be anything. It could be a hobby. I mean, literally anything that you're trying to succeed at, the connections make the difference. And it isn't so much who you know, it's more what do you know about them and what do they know about you? And what's your
I am someone who is very, as we've talked before, I don't trust easily. I'm pretty much the guy that I just go, I have people in my orbit that are helpful, but I have very few people that I am just like, I got this. That's why I love the person that I work with, her ability. I mean, she just stepped right in. She knew that. She understood that. She could have said, it's Easter, Joel, I'm not doing this stupid stuff. And she'd been right. That would never cross her mind. So having that is a great relief for me. She's one of the most valuable people in my life because of that. I could be successful easier with people like that. That's a hard thing for me for so long. I've always been that independent, I don't need anybody kind of mindset. Having somebody like that does make an incredible difference. It makes things a lot easier.
Yeah, it makes it easier, not just physically, but mentally.
Right.
Right. Because that's where the exhaustion comes in.
Absolutely.
Most of these things that we get exhausted about, they really aren't physically demanding. Some of them are, but most of them aren't. Most of them are just emotionally and mentally draining. And that drain, it's an energy drain. It's a massive drain.
It is. And earlier today, I find the great contrast. So I started the day shockingly at the gym this morning. It was deadlift day. And, I had a very vigorous deadlift workout, I think 475 pounds for a few reps. And, I had very heavy workout this morning. That was not near as exhausting to me as this stressful afternoon. Because physically, I felt fantastic when I left the gym, and it's amazing. And I feel fantastic now, so don't think that this has affected it. But that period of time was very stressful. And when I have something like this happen, I still have sessions that I'm dealing with. So I have tiny increments of time that I can communicate with my colleague, help me out, do this stuff. So I'm able to get her a message where she's able to handle it. And the entire hour I sit there, I'm trying not to think about, is that stuff getting done? Now, I know with her, it's always getting done, but it's a great relief to pick up my phone and say, it's all handled. It's all handled.
Yeah.
That's huge, so yeah.
Now,
and that
something like that is missing though from your life. I mean, you have that in your life, but when it's missing from your life, I mean, there is something that I noticed pretty early on with my own situation and with others that I met through doing podcasts and so forth. People who struggle the most are the ones who have the smallest social networks.
Oh, absolutely.
It's almost a direct, perfect correlation.
It is. And especially personality types. And I, again, for a lot of reasons, have always been that I got this guy. I've got it. Don't worry about it. I've literally one time when I moved from Florida to South Carolina, By myself, I loaded a truck carrying a couch and a refrigerator and put it in the truck by myself.
I'm not sure if that's self-reliant or crazy. I mean, it could be a combination.
It's crazy. Well, it's definitely crazy. But my point is, I never think about it. I just go do. And while it's doable, it's exhausting. It's and I'm not good. I'm just not good at asking for help. And then when I do get help, I'm like, is this help? You didn't do what I asked you to do. So having somebody that can literally do what I ask them to do is the most valuable thing that I have. And I'm able to be far more productive with that backup, so to speak.
Yeah. And the other thing that you mentioned that I think is really true and very, very important is to have that other person to tell you what you most need to hear. I think the way you expressed it was, you need to do something, you need to do a certain thing, you need to turn something around. You need to hear that. You need to have somebody tell you that. And it has to be somebody who's sympathetic. It can't be somebody, I shouldn't say can't. It's better if it's not somebody who's trying to mentally beat the crap out of you. You're going to get more out of the energy exchange when it's somebody who's there in your corner.
Completely. And that, as I said at the beginning, when we were talking about this, I'm very slow to trust. I don't trust many people. And when I do, it's unconditional in there, but it takes a while before I can get there. And there's a lot of reasons for that historically, but I'm not that guy that trusts everybody immediately in a minute. It's just, there's got to be a point where, and I got those people. I have 4 or 5 people that it's unconditional. If some, one of those people said, hey, I killed somebody. I'm like, I'm on my way. Where are we going? What are we doing? Are we burying the body? What are we doing? Let's go.
I'll keep you in mind.
Just give me a call. But of course I'm being facetious if anything that's ridiculous, and I am ridiculous. But this is the level, like, if you got a problem, you don't really have a problem if you got the right people with you. It's just, I got a group of people that I got solution based with, and the smaller that network or non-existent part of that network, life becomes really hard.
And it raises the really important question: if you don't have enough network, and I won't say that you don't have network. I think everybody to some degree has some network, even if it's just one person in your network. There aren't too many people, everybody in their network. But if your network is insufficient, you need a strategy to build it. And that for a lot of people, speaking as somebody who was born very introverted, or at least environmentally very introverted growing up, I know exactly how hard that can be. I mean, that can talk about feeling overwhelmed. That alone can feel overwhelming. The idea of trying to build out a network of social connections, oh my God, how the heck am I going to do that? It seems impossible when you don't have it.
Does. Yeah, and interestingly enough, with every client, no matter the age, every contact, every person you meet, get their phone number, get their name in. What do they do? They're your network. I have over the years of all the places I've been, I've lived in Florida, I lived in South Carolina, I've lived up in Virginia, I've had multiple jobs, I've been all over the country. I have thousands of people in my network. I mean, where if you need a therapist in Eugene, Oregon, I got your guy right now. So, you get that network. And so networks are very valuable, but particularly what I call that inner circle network, where that group is, you've got people that appreciate what you do. They understand who you are, that, they're going to respond to your message on Easter. They're going to do these things. That's a very rare, valuable asset to have. Yes. And you have to treat that with great respect.
Absolutely. Yeah. Not just respect, but care and love and joy.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah. And it goes both ways. Hey, if there's something on my end that let's go. It's not there's not a problem. We will do whatever's necessary.
Yeah, that's right. And I like that about you. I appreciate that about you. You were there for me in a time when I was really, really needing it, and it made a huge difference. I keep thinking about people who there's one listener I can think of who contacted me a year or two ago, I think it was, who was in a really bad place. He had a girlfriend, but they were living in a town, I think in Oklahoma, where they knew nobody. Their social network was limited to one each. It was the person
Wow.
they were, and neither one of them had enough income. They couldn't get jobs. They were just having all kinds of trouble. That's a really tough situation to start from. Now, I don't know what happened with him. I'm hoping that he did start building out the network. That was my recommendation to him. Just find anything. Go to a church. Go to any kind of civic organization. Find anybody you can find anywhere and start building contacts and start building relationships, because in the long run, it's going to help you get out of what you're dealing with right now.
Right.
Think about, again, like what I said before. I think about what it's like to be in that place and how hard it is to make that decision. I think it was Anna again made a comment that I'll reapply to what I'm talking about here. She was saying it in a slightly different context, but she said we've got to get real angry to change a situation that doesn't match our capabilities. I don't think this is a particular situation is one where we have no capabilities. We all have the capabilities of building connections. But she's also right. You kind of have to get angry enough to say, all right, this is not acceptable. It's not acceptable that I don't have enough of a network. I got to do something. I mean, I got to take this. If anger is all I got right now, I got to take this anger and turn it into something.
Well, anger is a great, using the emotional guidance scale, anger is a higher position than depression. So anger is an action emotion. And I'm all about action, as you know, just take action. And right. So the idea of getting angry or earlier, getting sick and tired, I'm done with this, screw it, let's go, whatever that verbiage is, but anything to get you going, because the antidote to everything is going to be some form of action, period. It's just, there's other things involved. I understand that, but I think action is fundamental for any situation to get better.
So let's talk about the action piece, because now that we have identified the problem, we're taking the scientific route. I don't know if you noticed that we're following the scientific method here, but we've identified our problem. We've identified what needs to change on it. We've identified the trigger that's going to change it, the taking action. So let's talk about the action piece. And you've told, by the way, I just have to parenthetically throw in here, you've told some of the best action-oriented stories I've ever heard here on the podcast, stories of people who are in really bad places and you got to take a step of action and produce unbelievable results and so forth. I think it's important to remember those stories not only exist, but they are the rule rather than the exception. Because we tend to think the opposite, right? Well, we're in that bad space. We think it's the other way around. We think that the odds are against us when we take the action.
Well, one of the things that I felt, as you know, many years, 1995 is when I got into my recovery from my gambling addiction. And I had to go to jail. I had a felony conviction. I lost everything, lost my fiance, lost my family. I mean, they were alive, but they didn't have anything to do with me, rightfully so. I taken a bunch of money from them. And I had nowhere to go or nothing to do. The only thing that I had any chance of anything going on was action. I got to find action, some form of action. And I didn't even know what that action was. But so the most basic thing was I could come up with is I got to work. So who's going to hire somebody that is a felony conviction, and I'm not a good laborer. I'm not good with my hands. So who's going to do that? So I found a job waiting tables. Never waited tables before. I lied to the manager that I had waited tables for. Pretty obvious at
that point, right?
Yeah. What are you going to do? I mean, it's waiting table. They don't know. It's not rocket science, but it was a legitimate job. And then from that job, it led to another job, So I knew there was an action piece that was going to be involved. So I'm a big believer in any action is helpful. Any action of like you're saying, building your network, going to talk to somebody at a church, applying for 20 jobs a day, going, asking, anything, just finding some form of, doesn't have to be aggressive action, but I like aggressive action when it comes to those things, because an action then gets you going. So you identify what the problem is and what would be the most logical action to take. And, in my argument sometimes is, it might not even be a logical action, just an action. If you've been sitting around all day and worried about your finances, let's start applying for jobs. Let's go stop into places that their hiring signs up. Sometimes you get lucky and get hired right then. What jobs can you get paid at that day? That's why I like waiting tables. you got tipped out every night. So it wasn't great money, but you make $70, $80 a night or whatever. And at that time, it was, better than what I was going to get anywhere else. And it was given to me that. So that was a solution. I waited tables, for a couple of years till I got on my feet, and then I did as they needed me. They called me. I turned out to be pretty good at it. It was, I was never ashamed of it. I mean, in the beginning, I was embarrassed. I was waiting tables, but I quickly realized, why would I be embarrassed about that? It's honest day's work and make some reasonable money, especially on weekends. So an action is, and that's why having the right people to encourage the action. When you're isolated, it's hard to come up with an action. And,
Yes.
and that's one of the big things. It's like, so I was talking to a guy the other day. This is a really cool story too. And he called me, he said, Joel, I'm overwhelmed. His house was a disaster. He had failed out of school. His parents are not speaking to him. He just living in this. He said, I don't know what to do. And he said, I just feel stuck. And I said, what, is your sink full of dishes? And he goes, yeah, it's disgusting. I said, wash the dishes. And he goes, I don't know if that matters. I said, yeah, wash the dishes. Text me when you're done. So 15 minutes later, so he got the dishes washed, put away. I said, is there garbage out? Take the garbage out. And I just kept giving him these little teeny tasks, and then it gained momentum. Then he started getting trash bags and getting the crap out of the house. Then he started cleaning out the refrigerator. Then he said, hey, listen, he changed everything with these series of actions that the actions were seemingly irrelevant to the problem, but he got his mindset right. Then he was able to, reach out to his parents and say, we got to solve this. And they together came up with a plan. And that launched him. But it all started with washing the dishes.
Yeah, that's a great point. So one little qualifier I wanted to throw in there, I'm pretty sure you would have included it anyway. We're suggesting some kind of action that has a constructive thing to it. Like, we don't want to go out and commit a crime. We don't want to go out and harm somebody. So it's got to be an action that actually moves things forward in at least somewhat positive way. Doesn't have to be in direction where we're going. We just try to avoid doing something.
I'm not suggesting robbing a bank. That action is not going to be fair. But anything, even washing the dishes is an action to engage more action. So something like that's fine. So I thank you for clarifying. I'm sure somebody's going to go, oh, I go rob a bank. You're welcome to, but that's not going to go well. But the idea of any action that I'm talking about, you would never harm another person either. Obviously, nothing to cause harm, or this is just some movement forward or even movement sideways. Just movement gets things going. Things that tend to be in motion stay in motion. They tend to stay in motion. Things that are at rest tend to stay at rest. And it's just that's basic physics.
It is. It's basic physics, basic philosophy, it's basic life, really.
When
we incorporate that into our lives, when we say to ourselves, okay, I'm going to take that really simple principle of what tends to be in motion, tends to stay in motion, and what tends to be at rest, tends to stay at rest. Put that to work, that's what makes change.
Absolutely.
That's literally the change, because the change part is the hard part. Maintaining the pattern is easy. It's changing that's the hard part, and that's what creates the change.
Yeah, the idea that change is so difficult, even though it seems so logical to change to the average person. But when you're in that set of behaviors, changing something. I mean, if you were to even experiment with yourself, say, look, I'm only going to use my left hand to open doors. Let me just see how that feels. If you're right-handed, of course. And you walk around and do that, it's shockingly hard. Not because it's hard to do it. It's hard to remember it. It's hard to change. Have you ever, I'm sure you have, electricity goes out in your house, and no matter how many times you walk into the kitchen, you still keep flipping that light switch.
Yes, of course.
Yeah. So
it's dark. That's what you do in the dark. You turn the light.
And I mean, you can do that 15 times in a night before the electricity comes on, but yet you'll find yourself, because it's so ingrained subconsciously. So the reason it's hard to change is the things you're changing are not stored in the conscious brain. It's stored subconsciously. It's there. It's hard to hear a different narrative. It's hard to, oh, well, these people are just full of it, that, blah, blah, blah. They can't do it. There's almost an argument against change because it's taking place at the subconscious level. And that doesn't budge very easily.
It doesn't budge. In fact, it can actually, that's the stuck part. That's the quote.
Yeah. That's where the stuck takes place. If you view, for the sample of this, the subconscious, assuming it's in the back, I always put front of the head, back of the head. But wherever your subconscious hangs out, it is, that's where the stuckness is. Your conscious brain is quite capable of change. Unfortunately, your conscious brain is very weak. It doesn't operate near the speed or capacity that your subconscious brain is. So emotions and all that are taking place there. And, identifying all of that, that's why I mentioned earlier the Abraham Hicks emotional guidance scale. That's why that concept of creating your own guidance scale is helpful, because the subconscious is where these feelings are coming from. So instead of spending all your energy, why do I feel this way? What do you feel? How do you feel? Am I this? Well, what would be a level up for you? They have a random 24 of them, I think, and that's not my emotional. That's what they use, but they encourage you make your own guidance scale. It's not So I have about 10 things on my emotional guidance scale that I need to. If I'm feeling that way, I know I have a bias toward action no matter what. It's like I always know there's an action that needs to take place. So my emotional guidance scale identifies what action is necessary. So it's a pretty simple process for me at this point.
I was just thinking about what my scale looks like, because I've actually given a couple of answers on the show here. And I'm realizing my guidance scale looks different depending on where I am. If I'm feeling at the lower end of the scale, the guidance scale has 2 items: where I am and better. That's it. There's nothing else.
Yeah.
But if I'm up in the high range, then I actually have that's where I get all the variation. That's where I get nuance. So it's like I might feel optimistic, or I might feel really grateful, or I might feel appreciative, or really joyful and loving. That's where I have all the nuance. But if I'm not feeling good, bam, it's just bad or good. That's it. Which one's better? Which one's worse? That's all.
Yeah, and I like that. It doesn't have to be this list that's rigid. It can be nuanced. The higher the scale goes, the more nuanced it is. You're feeling really good. Can I feel better? What can I do more? I'm actually, you look at that. But if I'm really down at the bottom, all I need to do is go a step up. That's whatever that is. I got to feel better. Whatever that means, feel better. Yeah,
as soon as possible.
Yeah, let's take a shower. Let's wash the dishes. Let's shave. Anything. I need something, and then we can revisit and adjust what that scale looks like, get more nuanced as we go.
And the funny thing is, like you were describing in the story of the gentleman who was doing his dishes and then taking out the garbage, all that kind of thing. When you do a few of those things, all of a sudden, possibilities that didn't seem available, let alone possible, 10 minutes ago, suddenly appear. Now, they were there all along. They were there every single moment of that. But for whatever reason, we couldn't allow ourselves to see them.
You were exhausted. Yeah. Remember exhausted?
You were exhausted. Yeah.
Yeah. And
exhaustion talked us out of it.
I play a couple of games on every morning when I wake up. One of them is Wordle, and the other is this. Yeah, Wordle. Yeah, and the other one is Connections. Do you play Connections?
Uh-huh.
And so Connections is by the same company that makes Wordle. And there's sometimes it's super easy. I mean, I go boom, boom, boom. It takes me like less than a minute to get it. And there's other times like I'll have to look at it. And so I have learned that after about 5 minutes, if I don't get it, I just leave it alone. I'll leave it alone. Later in the day, I'll come and I'll be shocked at how didn't I see that earlier? Because my mindset is different later in the day. I have a different focus. So leaving it alone allows me to look at it with brand new eyes. So the same thing, how do you not see it? Sometimes it's so obvious. It's like, oh my gosh, how did I not see that? Then, later in the day, it's clear. So as you're processing all this and if you're applying this to life, there is no situation that you can't find something better. Maybe you don't have access to it right then. So that's why some other actions seemingly unrelated can get you to a place where maybe you could see this differently.
And it's amazing to me how, like you say, if you just leave it and come back later in the day, all of a sudden possibilities occur to you that didn't occur before. It's amazing to me that that can happen in 5 minutes. You can walk away from it for 5 minutes, and that's enough time. I mean, it's literally just the act of walking away from it that does it. And the time level seems incidental. It doesn't even matter what the time is.
Yeah. And so, on today's connection game, they use symbols for pictures for the first time. Mm-hmm. And I've never had it it's always been words. And so today was just pictures. And I'm like, oh my gosh, my poor brain. And so I got the first row pretty quick, and I'm like, I want to drive myself crazy. So I left it. Then at lunch, I looked at it, and it was like, as soon as I got the second row, then everything else was on. Then it's like boom, 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 boom. But I didn't have access to that at 6 a.m. this morning.
Yeah. So there's a little bit of a piece of guidance built into that, which is,
yes,
you're not getting it right now, take a break.
Yes, and that's important.
Just walk away from it for a bit.
Yeah, and walk away. And that's and sometimes the most obvious thing when you are exhausted, the simple solution is to rest, is to feed yourself, to rest, to get, sometimes that's the most obvious. It doesn't seem like that. I've always liked little kids who, when they're sleepy, they try desperately not to fall asleep. So that they'll and they're fighting falling asleep. Like, no.
Oops, you're muted out. I'm not hearing you. Your microphone's off. Can you hear me? Not hearing you. Something went kablooey. I don't know what. Oh, he's gonna connect out, connect in. Let's see if that makes a difference. I heard that little brrr sound, and then it was gone. Oh no. Technology, you gotta love it. Oh, well, he disconnected entirely. Okay, so he must be doing a reboot. That's fine. Let's see, what else do I need to tell you about? I mentioned this. Okay, here comes Joel back. I'll tell about it later. Nope, nothing yet. I'm still not hearing you. It's like you're muted somewhere. Where could you be muted? Okay, you're gonna be right back. All right. So anyway, yes, check out the episode that I did earlier today with Anne-Marie Young, and our guest was Angela Beyer. The episode had some really cool stuff in it, including this idea of connection. And the fact that Joel and I were just talking about connection made me think of it. It also made me think of this project that I alluded to in that episode. Now, I'll tell you about it here for a moment. I realized that, lots of people have lots of complaints about social media. This is not a new thing. People are complaining about it all over the place. People are making changes, taking it out of their lives and so forth. You may be one of them. But I realized what the big problem with social media is. It's not the thing that we tend to blame it as the reason why kids can't pay attention, or it's ruining our youth or whatever like that, or it's a waste of time. But for me, it's more a question of what do we do? What's missing from it? And what's missing from it? Now we can hear you. There you are.
I'm so sorry. I have no idea what happened. So
that's right. Let me just finish my little story. I was telling a story to people. So anyway, what I realized is that what social media missing is that real connection. That we have these fake connections that we have, posts and videos and pictures that we upload and so forth. But the thing that's missing is real connection. Kind of like what you and I do here, Joel. We have a connection here that goes on through this live video that we're doing. So I'm actually working on a project that I'm hopeful will give us the next level of social media. I think we should put social back into social media because it was taken out about 25 years ago. I think it needs to go back in.
Yeah, and the in my private practice here in town, I do a lot of virtual work with people all over the country. But when possible, the connection I make face to face is far superior to anything I can do virtually. In the beginning, especially as I develop a rapport, it works fine virtually, or in person. But in the beginning, I like the energy exchange. I can pick up who they are pretty easily. It's a good thing.
A really good thing. fired.
Yeah.
So yeah, more to come on that, I guess, is why I was bringing that up. But I'm excited because I think we've latched onto something here that if we can put this into something that people can use on a regular basis, which is what I want to try to do, this could be big. I mean, we could actually bring connection back online. Not just electronic connection, but real connection.
Yeah, that would be amazing. I love that idea.
I love it too. So anyway, getting back to what we're talking about, which isn't all that far away from my little diversion there, but this whole idea that we can take action steps in order to climb out of something, it's certainly a revolutionary concept. Now, the next question is, once you get those action steps started, then what? I mean, you just walk the walk? Is that the whole deal?
In general, remember the statement, things in motion tend to stay in motion. Once you get going, you keep the energy, you keep the movement, you keep taking action, and it will increase. It will go. It's the goal. I tell everybody every day, I always have a bias toward action. If I don't know what to do, I need to be heading towards something. Whether it's going upstairs, do some bookkeeping, whatever, I need a bias toward action. I need to be thinking what my next step is. And even if it's the wrong step, it's better than no step at all, because I lose momentum pretty easily.
Yeah, because it's easy to lose that. So I guess the next step is to just take the next step.
Take the next step. Yeah, and constantly, like you said, use your network, utilize your resources, develop those support people. Always, run things by people, brainstorm. I love mastermind meetings where you discuss ideas and stuff like that. It's amazing when you do that. It's very exciting.
Mastermind, that was one. I remember when we talked about the book that Napoleon Hill wrote, Think and Grow Rich.
Right.
Mastermind concept was first brought up, I believe. I don't think anybody had ever done it that way before his book. But I remember reading about it the first time and being a little confused because I felt like you had to get together all the best minds and all that kind of thing. It took a while before I realized, no, that's not it at all. This is about creating social connections. That's what the mastermind is really. I mean, yeah, if you can get the greatest minds, fabulous. But the main thing is to develop the connections. I find, I agree with you, by the way. I mean, I love to be in rooms with super smart people, but a mastermind meeting, I love all perspectives. Because everybody with a different background, you want people how they see it. It's amazing what develops for me when I coordinate and meet with people. Whether I'm planning in business or talking about ideas, I always find something because I have the old concept in relationships that sort of opposites attract or you're not compatible. The idea, there's a nuance to that where you want people who, like, my strengths need to match take up where your deficits are and vice versa. I like people in my life. I'm not an organized guy. I got that ADHD brain and that going on. So I need people in my life who are super organized and handle that side of it. Now they can't do my side of it as well as I do it, but they do their side of it. And that's the synergy. That's the synergy that comes along with finding that connection. It's, Abraham Hicks is talking about, the energy attraction, like a person looking to sell a car is not attracting another person trying to sell a car. You're trying to attract the opposite, or somebody who's buying a car. You need that. It isn't about just simply being compatible. I know some very compatible people that are super unorganized and they're ADHD. They're not going to do well together because they don't have that one stable, rational, organized person in their life. It's going to go out there. That's why the most successful businesses and relationship require the other strength to enrich the relationship or connection, not necessarily add to one side of the dysfunction. Yeah, I agree. I actually think that you need both kinds. I mean, if we have two kinds that we're talking about here, one kind is the one whose perspective is completely different from yours, maybe even an opposite from yours, and the other one is somebody whose perspective is simpatico in perhaps. I mean, like you have the same viewpoint on life. You need both. The reason you need
them all, but
a different perspective from yours is because that's where you get your best ideas from. That's where you get the most growth from. That's where you move yourself the more. The reason you want to have the ones that are sympathetic to you is that's where you get the best support from. Those are the people who are in your corner. Those are the ones who are saying, yeah, I'm with you all the way. You need both sides of that.
Yes, absolutely. So I like that. I like that perspective. I like that concept. That's why you want a mastermind meeting with all different types of people. I love to hear every perspective. I've got some great, like I said, I have wonderful ideas from 12-year-olds. I mean, 12-year-olds are amazing. The idea that they can give you. I mean, they're
It's some of
brilliant.
the best ideas you can get. I think they're the smartest people on earth, really.
Yeah. Well, they have a view that I love because it hasn't been polluted with all the stuff they can't do. So
Right.
they'll give you a really clear, perfect vision of it. You're going, wow, that's great.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. And that clarity comes without fear, because fear is really
Absolutely.
behind
Yeah.
that tendency we have
Yeah.
to go into that depressed state. They don't have the fear. I mean, some of them might. Well, you've actually dealt with some kids who did have fear, and yet even
Yeah.
with them, and they had some pretty severe stuff that happened to them. All you had to do was show them here's a different way about understanding how
Yeah.
life works, and it's like they flicked that light switch that
Yeah.
wasn't working before just suddenly started to work.
Yeah, because it flips right back on. I've been in a room with some of the brightest people in the world, uh, and you say there's 10 people in the room, and I'm conducting a meeting, and I'm looking for input. It's like crickets often. Nobody wants to stand up and say it. If I get a group of 12-year-olds and ask the same question, I'm going to get awesome, constant, ridiculous answers. And I like what they do. It's like, well, let's just, there's no solution that a 12-year-old can't come up with. I'm not saying it's viable, but they'll have an idea. And where you ask that same group of, I was once had a meeting. I had 3 or 4 young doctors there, and there's a couple of nurses. They were new at the place, and I was asking questions, and nobody would answer anything. Like, and I'm like, well, are we intimidated? Because there isn't a wrong answer here. Nothing stupid. I'm just trying to streamline something. I like to spitball ideas. There's nothing that to try to get that well primed, but it's like pulling teeth. And again, if I got 6 12-year-olds sitting around the table, we're going to have unlimited. I mean, you can't keep up with the answers. Now again, might be silly, but they're not going to ever hesitate to give those answers.
It occurs to me too that what we're talking about with those experts who are afraid to say something, because that's really what that was. They were afraid
Right.
to express something. They were actually expressing the very same topic we started this whole show on. They were in a space of, I don't feel good. I don't feel comfortable about this. I don't feel like I'm empowered. I feel disempowered. And so I feel like, right now, not in a big way, but kind of this little world I'm in right now is kind of against me. So I'm just going to clam up and shut up because that's the safest thing to do. And oh, by the way, in the midst of all that, I'm wearing myself out doing it.
Yeah.
Brilliant people wear themselves out because they've got so much life experience that has taught them that they have to close up and protect themselves.
Yes, absolutely. And that matters. And you're, yeah, and that's where a lot of that comes in. So the full circle that going back to the original concepts that we're talking about, the being able to understand, you're not lazy, you're just worn out. And when you figure out why you're worn out and all these battles, it's like water torture. It's like you can handle anything for a little while, but 20 years or something, 30 years or something, and you're worn out, you're exhausted. That's why so many people get to 40, 50, 60, and they've lost their enthusiasm. They just are convinced that there's nothing. It's they're down, they're depressed, they're just it's not even depression sometimes. It's just, what's the point? They're very jaded, and to be able to, I try to wake up every day. I'm curious. I'm always learning new stuff. I try to keep that mindset, and it's such a great way to live. I'm always studying something. That I'm always on deep dives on everything. I'm always talking to new people. I have the greatest job in the world, and I just feel like, wow, this is great. Other people could like, why are we doing this? The last week I was sitting down with my tax people, and that was a rough session. And they one of the young people in the room, there's a young accountant there, and he just, because I have so many things going on, I'm talking to him about business ideas, and I want to know, how do we structure this and structure that? And he looked at me and he said, Mr. Elston, he said, I just got a question, not to be offensive. Why? He said, you don't have to do anything anymore. Why? I go, yeah, I would be miserable if I didn't do anything. It's not about money anymore. It's just I want to go do these things. And the other people in the room understood that, but he's like, why don't you just go sit on the beach? Why don't you just go chill? I go, that is, it is. No, I actually appreciated the question. I said, I'd love to keep my foot on the gas. I love what I do. I'm not going to stop that. I'd be dead in 6 months if I wouldn't sit on the beach. I need to get up and I need to do. And that's just, and he goes, man, I just can't imagine why you just wouldn't just hang it up. Just, you don't have to work anymore. I said, I haven't had to work for a long time. I get to work every day. I don't have to work for a long time.
His question's a really good question because it goes to a commonly held belief in our society. It's a belief that I'll kind of put under the umbrella of this is what retirement is. Retirement is something that you aim for when you're 65 or older, that you're just going to live out your golden years. And that's what, and you don't have to work hard anymore. You don't have to do all this stuff anymore. That's when you get to enjoy the rewards. There are two interesting facets to that. The first facet is it almost never arrives. The second facet is once it does arrive, you don't want it anymore.
What?
It's a false illusionary thing that our society has put out there. Like this is the ideal, and it's not an ideal at all. It's actually kind of a prison.
We need a black label warning on retirement. It is dangerous. Right. It will kill you. It really will. It is not. I accept that I likely will die one day. I'm not really totally sure of that, but I will accept that concept. But it won't be after retiring. It'll be, I've always said I will die at my office or die at the gym if I'm lucky. And one of those two things is going to happen. And I'm not being morbid. I'm not wanting that to happen. But at the end of the day, in the meantime, let's keep our foot on the gas. That's the mentality. And it's a great way to live. I'm not exhausted at all. I'm much less exhausted now than I was 30 years ago. I had a crazy day today, as I mentioned earlier. I was up at 5 o'clock this morning at the gym, did that work, saw 8 clients today, did a bunch of stuff, and I'm doing a podcast tonight. So, I mean, that's, and I'm not saying that with arrogance. I'm saying I just got that unlimited energy vibe going, and I'll get up and do something really cool tomorrow. So,
well, it also raises the really important question, not like you said, you were describing it in terms of, well, okay, if I'm going to die someday, this is the way I'm going to go. But it's also a reminder that when we set the goal into the future, after we reach a certain retirement age, that's when things are going to feel good. We're basically saying they can't feel good now.
Right. Well, you're putting that off. I have this. I'm very much into life is about the journey, not the destination concept. That's one of I say that all the time. I think I posted about that recently. And the journey is where there is no destination. I've accepted that. There is, the journey is the point. Every day is the journey. The weirdness. Today was very weird, but in a weird way, I loved it. It was just, I'm able to handle it. Life threw a crazy curveball to me today. And me, along with help from my colleague, were able to knock this out and make it, we laugh about it. I mean, it's like this is a crazy world we live in, and we embrace it. So we overcome, we move forward, and I could say I'm tired of doing all this silliness. It's a waste of time. I don't have to do it. But yet a side of me, what would I do tomorrow if I wasn't going to work? What am I going to do?
Mm-hmm.
Sit around and watch The Price is Right or something? I mean, no.
That's definitely a quick route to death right there, as far as I'm
concerned. Yeah. So just getting up, going, and I will die at some point. I know that, but when everything has been worn out and it's done, there's nothing. We're going to the very end, foot on the gas. It's a great way to live, and in perspective, getting back to it, my perspective is, look, I demand my body to perform. I get in the gym. I demand my brain to perform. And it like, okay, I guess we got to do this. It doesn't atrophy. It doesn't get worse. It just simply accept this is what we got to do. He keeps demanding it. And then when you stop demanding it from the body then goes, oh, okay, now we can shut it down.
I've also
That's
noticed
how it works.
this is something I've been noticing, particularly in the last few days and weeks. I've been getting back to doing stuff that I had previously shied away from because I was so tired of feeling sick and tired of it. Stuff that every time I felt like I was beating my head against walls. Like, why am I doing this? It's just so pointless. And so I treated it as if it was pointless, and I stopped doing it. And here I am getting myself back into it. Now, how I'm getting back into it is kind of interesting because I'm using AI to help me out, and all of a sudden the AI makes it easier for me to handle it. But what's even more interesting from my perspective is that as I get back into it, I'm encountering many of the same emotions I experienced before. I'm encountering many of the same kinds of experiences. But what's different is that this time around, maybe it's because of the break that I took, because there was an obvious break when I stepped away from it. Maybe it's the fact that I have some AI help to help me. Maybe it's the fact that I've been doing this podcast for 11 plus years now, and I have a lot more social connections than I had before. So maybe I'm feeling more supported. But whatever the reason is, all of a sudden I'm enjoying this activity that I didn't like. In fact, I disliked it so much that I stopped. I took something that I stopped doing because I disliked it, and I'm turning it into something that I can't say I really like it, but hey, it's interesting.
Well, now that's interesting. You have made that's a great concept. You made a slight change you took action. You took a break, you took action, you restarted. Your perspective if you keep this going, you will like it. You can get to a place where you like it. You really could.
Scary. I mean, really, the idea that I can like this thing? Are you kidding
me?
Yeah.
Well, that's so. Yeah, absolutely. So I'm very much in favor of that. I mean, so yes, absolutely. Keep going. You'll eventually you'll like it. It's like, I never thought years ago when I started early in my recovery, up 30 years ago, I was like, oh my gosh, how am I going to survive? I just couldn't even imagine surviving. I can't imagine being where I'm at now. And just being able to make it to, some point. And, now I'm like, oh my God, this is awesome. Let's keep going. Let's keep going. Let's keep going. And as I mentioned earlier, not only is my brain better today, but I'm far less exhausted than I was 30 years ago. I couldn't have had the day I had today 30 years ago.
I haven't mentioned what it is that I've been doing, but I'll tell you because it just occurred to me that it has a double meaning. We've been talking about how we essentially program ourselves into a corner. I mean, that's what this whole exhaustion thing is all about. Well, the thing that I'm talking about is programming. I've never enjoyed programming, and I still don't enjoy programming. But programming is how I hopefully end up creating this new social media thing.
Yeah, fantastic.
So I'm actually engaging in something that I don't like doing, finding I like it a little bit better toward the goal of accomplishing something that I think would be pretty damn cool.
Absolutely. I agree. And that's a great example. Perfect example.
And I'm reprogramming myself to do reprogramming.
I love it.
The resonance is just insane. Joel, it's been fun as usual. We know how to go down these rabbit holes, and they're a lot of fun to go down.
I love it. Thank you, buddy.
I have so many great co-hosts, but I have to admit, I like going down rabbit holes with you more than any of the others.
Well, thank you. I think it's the fact I'm crazy that helps.
I think so. Well, there's a simpatico craziness.
Yeah.
So thank you much. Thank you, podcast listeners everywhere. See you all next time here on LOA Today. Goodbye, everybody.